Victor Steele Donavard sat alone at the scarred oak bar. The clubhouse empty except for the hum of the old Frigidaire and the distant rumble of Harleys pulling into the gravel lot. His calloused fingers worked a soft cloth across the purple heart metal. The purple ribbon faded to lavender after 52 years. The metal caught the last of the November sunlight, slanting through the window, throwing a small, violet shadow across his knuckles. The jungle never really left. Some nights he still woke to the sound of rotors, and screaming still felt the weight of Tommy Brennan across his shoulders, blood soaking through both their uniforms as he carried him 12 miles to the evac point. Tommy made it home. Deal made it home. 63 men from their company didn't. In the jungle, the code was simple. You protected your brothers. You kept your word. You fought for what was right, even when the brass said stand down, even when the mission was already lost, even when survival meant compromise. Steele had learned that some things mattered more than survival. Honor, duty, the promise you made to the man bleeding out beside you that his sacrifice would mean something. He brought that code home in 70. Some of them never could. He wore it like a second skin, built a life around it, raised a daughter by it. The Iron Brotherhood Motorcycle Club wasn't a gang. It was 47 men besides himself who understood that the war never really ended, that the mission to protect the innocent continued on American soil, that the code survived even when everything else burned. Boots on wood. The door swung wide and Preacher Tom Walsh stepped through, first silver hair pulled back in a ponytail, the small gold cross at his throat catching light. Behind him came Judge Harold Brennan, then Doc Frank Morrison, then Gunny Mike Patterson, then 43 others. Vietnam vets, mostly a few from Korea, some from the Gulf, 4 from Iraq and Afghanistan, ages spanning from 38 to 71. Mechanics and teachers and retired cops and small business owners. Men who'd seen what happened when good people stayed silent. Preacher cleared his throat, his voice still carrying the resonance of Sunday sermons delivered to congregations that had dwindled over the decades. Brothers, Thanksgiving dinner for the homeless vets is confirmed. We've got the VFW hall, the church ladies are cooking, and we need volunteers for setup Saturday morning. Hands went up around the room. Steele nodded, made mental notes. This was what they did now. No more running from the law, no more territorial disputes with other clubs, no more of the chaos that had defined the Brotherhood's early years. They took care of their own. They took care of those who couldn't. His phone lit up on the bar. Katie. Steele smiled, started to reach for it, then saw the time. 3:17 on a Friday afternoon. She should still be in class. The voice on the other end wasn't his daughter's. Male, elderly, strained with controlled panic. Mr. Donovan, this is Robert Chen. I teach history at Mountain View Prep. Your daughter has been hurt badly. She's being taken to Memorial Hospital right now. You need to come immediately. The bar went silent. 47 faces turned toward Steele. His hand had gone white-knuckled around the phone, the Purple Heart forgotten on the bar. What happened to my daughter? Mr. Chen's voice carried the particular weight of someone delivering news that would change everything. She was assaulted in the school parking lot by multiple students. It's very bad, Victor. The ambulance just left. I'm following in my car now. Steele stood. The bar stool clattered backward. Gunny Mike was on his feet instantly, the old Marine gunnery sergeant's instincts reading the threat in Steele's posture. Brother, what do you need? My daughter's been hurt. Teacher says it's bad. Multiple attackers. 47 men rose as one. The sound of chairs, scraping boots, hitting floor hands, reaching for keys was like thunder. Steele held up his hand. No, not yet. I don't know what this is. I go alone until I know different. Judge stepped forward, his JAG officer training evident in the measured way he approached crisis. Then we wait. But Steele, where we're ready, you call, we ride, no questions. Steele grabbed his jacket, his keys the Purple Heart going into his pocket out of habit. At the door, he turned back. If I call, it means it's bad. It means someone hurt my little girl and the system's gonna try to bury it. And if that's what happened, he didn't finish, didn't need to. These men knew what came after that silence. They'd all lived through moments when the code demanded action, when standing by meant complicity, when the only choice was to step forward or surrender everything you believed. The Harley roared to life. Steele tore out of the parking lot, the club insignia on his back catching the late afternoon sun. Behind him, 47 men waited by their bikes, ready for the call that would change everything. 8 weeks earlier, Katie Donovan had noticed something wrong. The morning light through the tall windows of Mountain View Preparatory Academy caught the dust motes floating above rows of polished desks. Katie sat in the back corner of Advanced Calculus, her notebook open to a page of meticulously worked derivatives, watching Brandon Caldwell sleep with his head on his folded arms 3 rows ahead. Mr. Peters droned through the lecture on integration techniques. Brandon's test paper from yesterday lay face up on his desk. Perfect score, 100%. Katie's own paper showed a 94 with 2 small errors she'd made rushing through the final problem. Brandon hadn't taken a single note all semester, slept through half the lectures, never asked questions, yet somehow maintained a perfect average. The bell rang. Students shuffled out. Katie waited, watching Brandon stretch and gather his things without even glancing at the board where Mr. Peters had written the homework assignment. She'd been watching for 3 weeks now, taking mental notes the way her father had taught her. Observe first, verify second, act third. In the hallway, she kept her distance, moving through the crowd of students who parted around her like water around a stone. The biker's daughter. That's what they called her when they thought she couldn't hear. Sometimes they said it where she could. It didn't matter anymore. She'd learned early that loneliness was easier than pretending to belong. The computer lab was empty during lunch period. Katie slid into a terminal in the back corner, logged in with her student ID, and pulled up the school's shared drive. Sloppy security. She'd learned basic systems navigation from her father's friend Crow, who ran IT for a local hospital. Nothing illegal, just understanding how networks worked, how careless people could be with access permissions. The math department folder showed recent uploads from Mr. Peters. Homework answer keys. That was normal. Study guides. Also normal. Then a subfolder labeled a private tutoring materials. Katie clicked 64 files. Every test for the semester. Complete answer keys. Dated 2 days before each exam. The metadata showed they'd been accessed repeatedly from an IP address that traced back to the school's athletic center computer lab. Her hands had gone cold. This wasn't a student getting lucky. This was organized. This was bought. She copied the files to her personal cloud storage, logged out, erased her access from the system logs the way Crow had shown her. Evidence secured. Now she needed to understand the full scope. That afternoon, she sat in the library during study hall, her laptop open to what looked like history homework, while she actually combed through local news archives. Brandon Caldwell, son of State Senator James Caldwell. 3 mentions in the Asheville Citizen-Times over the past 2 years. Football star leads Mountain View to regional championship. Senator's son awarded ROTC scholarship. Caldwell family donates $50,000 to new gymnasium. Then the buried stories. The ones that appeared once and vanished. Female student transfers after personal issues. Investigation into harassment allegations dropped due to insufficient evidence. 6 separate incidents. 6 girls. All the complaints filed. All the cases closed within 48 hours. Katie's stomach twisted. She knew that pattern. Her mother had worked in the ER before the drunk driver took her 8 years ago. She'd seen what happened when powerful men hurt people, and the system looked away. She thought about her father then, about the code he'd taught her, the one he'd brought back from Vietnam and never abandoned. You see wrong, you stand up, even if you stand alone, especially if you stand alone. Her phone buzzed. Text from Mr. Chen, the elderly history teacher who treated her with respect because he had recognized her father's unit patch one day and spent 20 minutes sharing stories about Korea. Need to talk. Come to my classroom after school. Katie found him at his desk, paper spread before him, his lined face grave. Robert Chen was 71 years old, a Korean War veteran who'd been teaching for 43 years. His hands showed the slight tremor of age, but his eyes remained sharp. Katie, I'm going to ask you something directly. Have you noticed anything unusual about Brandon Caldwell's academic performance? She hesitated. Mr. Chen had been teaching longer than her father had been alive. He'd seen everything. Yes, sir, I think he's cheating. I think Mr. Peters is helping him. He didn't look surprised. I've suspected for a year, but I'm one voice. I'm retiring in June, and the Caldwells donate heavily to this school. I need someone young, someone brave, someone who won't back down when they come after you. And they will come after you, Katie. You were in Korea. Did you back down from powerful enemies? The old teacher's eyes went distant for a moment, remembering frozen mountains and human waves and choices made when surrender seemed sane and standing firm seemed suicidal. No, and that's why I'm here to help you. But you need to understand what you're walking into. Senator Caldwell sits on the school board. Principal Andrews owes his job to Caldwell money. The county prosecutor plays golf with the senator every Sunday. These people have buried 6 assault complaints against Brandon. They'll bury this too if we don't have perfect evidence. Katie showed him the files on her laptop. His face went pale as he scrolled through test answers, financial records showing payments from an account registered to James Caldwell to Peters's personal checking. $48,000 over 2 years. Dear God, he's been paying for more than test answers. He's been paying for silence. They spent the next hour documenting everything, creating redundant backups, preparing the report that Katie would deliver to Principal Andrews. Mr. Chen's hands shook slightly as he printed the evidence packet. He'd been brave once in Korea. Now he was being brave again, and both of them knew what it might cost. Katie, your father, the Iron Brotherhood. Those men have a reputation. My father taught me that honor isn't about reputation. It's about doing right when no one's watching and the cost is high. Mr. Chen nodded slowly. Then let's do right. And whatever comes after, we face it together. Monday morning, Katie walked into Principal Andrews' office with the evidence packet under her arm and her heart hammering against her ribs. Andrews was a small man with nervous eyes and a tendency to touch his thinning hair when stressed. He touched it a lot during the 30 minutes Katie laid out the case. When she finished, he sat silent for a long moment. These are very serious allegations, Miss Donovan. You understand that Senator Caldwell is on the school board, that his family has been generous to this institution. I understand that cheating is wrong, no matter who your father is. Andrews flinched at the steel in her voice. I'll need to investigate this thoroughly. Talk to Mr. Peters. Talk to Brandon. You understand that false accusations can have consequences. I understand that true accusations should have consequences too. He promised to investigate. His tone suggested he'd do exactly enough to file the report and then let it die quietly. Katie left the office knowing she'd just painted a target on herself, but unable to see any other choice. The code didn't allow for convenient silence. Brandon found her in the hallway that afternoon, stepped directly into her path, his 3 closest friends forming a loose semicircle behind him. Ethan, Marcus, Cole. Football players, all of them. Sons of important families, none as important as Brandon's. You're the snitch. My dad told me about your little report to Andrews. Katie's pulse hammered, but she kept her voice level. I reported a crime. Brandon moved closer, not touching her yet, but violating her space using his size to intimidate. Your mother died because nobody important cared about her. Drunk driver walked away with probation. You know why? Because your family is nobody. Your father's a criminal. You're nobody too. And nobodies don't challenge the Caldwells. The words landed like fists. Katie had never known the details of her mother's case. Her father had shielded her from it, but she'd always suspected that justice hadn't been served. Now Brandon was using that pain as a weapon. My father taught me that honor isn't about being important. Brandon's smile was ugly. Your father's about to learn what happens when the unimportant forget their place. So are you. He walked away laughing. His friends followed. Katie stood alone in the hallway, students flowing around her like she was invisible, and felt the first cold fingers of real fear. The next morning, her locker door hung open, the lock broken. Inside, someone had spray-painted snitch in dripping red letters, books scattered on the floor, her lab notebook torn to pieces. Principal Andrews surveyed the damage with a concerned expression that didn't reach his eyes. Vandalism is unacceptable. We'll investigate. The investigation consisted of nothing. No cameras checked, no students questioned. The damage remained visible for 2 days before maintenance finally painted over it. The message had been delivered and received. Day 3, Katie's bike tires were slashed. All 4 of them cut so thoroughly the rims scraped concrete when she tried to roll it to the parking lot edge. She called her father for a ride, minimized what happened, invented a story about road debris. He'd offered to come to the school, talk to administrators. She'd refused. Just needed new tires. Nothing more. The lies tasted like ash, but telling the truth meant watching her father become what everyone already thought he was. The dangerous biker. the criminal, the man who solved problems with violence. She wouldn't do that to him. Wouldn't let Brandon Caldwell prove every ugly stereotype right. Day 5, the text started. Anonymous number. Your dad can't protect you here. Snitches end up bleeding. Count your day, biker trash. Katie showed them to Mr. Chen. He filed a formal complaint with Andrews. 24 hours later, Mr. Chen received a registered letter. Early retirement offer. Effective immediately. Generous pension if he accepted. Veiled threats about budget cuts and position elimination if he didn't. He sat across from Katie in his empty classroom Friday afternoon, the letter between them on the desk, 43 years of teaching reduced to a bureaucratic dismissal. They're forcing me out. Katie, I'm so sorry. I should have known they'd come after anyone who helped you. This isn't your fault. No, but it's my failure. I'm taking the retirement. My wife's sick. We need the pension. I can't afford to fight. You'll be alone now. He looked at her with eyes that had seen too much survived, too much compromise, too much. Please tell your father, let him handle this. These people are dangerous. Katie shook her head. I can handle it. Just one more week. I'll find another way. She couldn't. There was no other way. The system belonged to the Caldwells. Every door led back to bought silence and buried truth. But she couldn't surrender either. Surrender meant Brandon kept hurting people. Meant the next girl who stood up would face this alone too. That night at dinner, she pushed spaghetti around her plate while her father studied her with the quiet intensity that came from decades of reading tactical situations. You're not eating. Something wrong at school. Just stressed about midterms. He reached across the table, squeezed her hand. Katie, you know you can tell me anything. If someone's bothering you, if you need help. I'm fine, Dad, really. Just need to get through next week. The lie burned. She saw him wanting to push, saw him recognizing that she needed space to handle whatever this was, saw him making the choice to trust her judgment. That trust made the lie worse. Friday morning arrived cold and gray. Katie packed her bag, slowly aware that she was walking towards something inevitable. The week of harassment had established the pattern. They wanted her scared. They wanted her isolated. They wanted her to understand that challenging power had consequences. What they didn't understand was that some people had been taught lessons that went deeper than fear. The day crawled past, each class period a countdown. The hallways felt more hostile, the silence around her more pronounced. Brandon and his friends watched her with anticipation. They knew something she didn't. Or maybe they knew something she'd already guessed. 3:15, final bell. Katie gathered her books and walked out of her last class, knowing that whatever waited in the parking lot would determine everything that came after. They were leaning against their trucks when she emerged. Brandon, Ethan, Marcus, Cole, and a fifth she didn't recognize. Jason, maybe? Another football player. They'd positioned themselves between her and the bike rack blocking the only exit. Around them a crowd was gathering, students lingering, phones emerging from pockets. That particular electricity in the air that preceded violence, the ugly human instinct to witness suffering from a safe distance. Brandon pushed off from his truck. Hey, Katie, we need to talk about your little report. Katie stopped 10 feet away. Her hands had gone numb. She could run back into the school, but that just delayed this. Could call her father, but he was 30 minutes away, and they'd be done by then. Could scream, but nobody here would help. She'd seen that truth carved into every turned head, every student who'd watched her locker destroyed and said nothing. She thought about her father then, about the stories he'd told of carrying Tommy Brennan through the jungle, the choice to keep moving when every instinct screamed to drop the weight and save yourself. The understanding that some burdens couldn't be set down because setting them down meant abandoning everything you believed about who you were. I'm not afraid of you. Brandon laughed. The sound carried across the parking lot. You should be. Your dad's not here. No old teacher to save you. Just us. And a whole lot of witnesses who know better than to help biker trash. He moved fast, shoved her hard in the chest. Katie stumbled back but stayed on her feet, tried to step around him. Marcus blocked her path. She turned. Cole was there. They'd formed a circle. Brandon's voice dropped lower, meant only for her, but caring enough that the closest students could hear. My dad says you cost him $50,000 cleaning up your mess. Says your family should pay. Says people need to learn where they stand. Katie's voice came out steadier than she felt. I stand for what's right. Wrong answer. His fist caught her cheek. The world exploded into white light and copper taste. Katie's knees buckled. She tried to catch herself, but Ethan grabbed her arms from behind, held her upright. Brandon hit her again. Nose this time. Something crunched. Blood sheeted down her face, hot and viscous. She screamed. The sound raw and animal. Nobody moved. 30 students with phones raised recording bearing witness, doing nothing. Marcus kicked her legs. She went down hard, Ethan releasing her arms at the last second so she hit the asphalt with nothing to break the fall. Her palms shredded on the rough surface. Brandon kicked her ribs. Once, twice. Something snapped inside her chest and breathing became agony. My father is a state senator. We ask you're untouchable. Cole's boot could eat her shoulder. She curled into a ball, trying to protect her head, trying to breathe through broken ribs and blood filling her throat. Jason grabbed her hair, yanked her head back. Brandon hit her again. Jaw this time. The world tilted and grayed. Through the haze, she heard one student yell, "Stop it!" But the voice didn't move closer, didn't intervene, just bore witness from a safe distance while 5 boys beat a girl unconscious. Brandon stood over her when they finally stopped. Katie could barely see through swollen eyes, barely hear through the ringing in her ears. His voice came from very far away. This is what happens when trailer trash challenges their betters. Anyone else got a problem? The crowd's silence was answer enough. Brandon spat on her and walked away. His friends followed. Their laughter echoed across the parking lot, mixing with the sound of truck engines, starting the crowd dispersing, now that the entertainment was finished. Katie lay on cold asphalt, blood pooling beneath her, face consciousness slipping. She'd stood up. She'd done right. And this was the cost. Mr. Chen found her 3 minutes later. He'd come back to clean out his classroom, seen the crowd from the second-floor window run down too late. His hands shook as he dialed 911, his voice breaking as he gave the address. 16-year-old female, severe assault, unconscious, heavy bleeding from facial wounds. Then he scrolled through his phone to the emergency contact. Dad, Victor Donovan. The hospital was antiseptic white and steady beeping when Steele crashed through the emergency room doors. A nurse moved to intercept him. The look on his face stopped her mid-step. Mr. Chen stood beside the reception desk, old hands trembling. Victor, I'm sorry. I should have protected her. Steele's voice came out flat, controlled. The particular calm of a soldier who'd pushed past rage into cold tactical clarity. Where is she? Room 7, but Victor, it's bad. Steele walked down the corridor like he was walking point in hostile territory. Each step measured, each breath deliberate. The door to room 7 stood half open. He pushed through and stopped dead. Katie lay on the narrow bed, her face so swollen and discolored, he barely recognized her. Purple-black bruises covered her cheeks. Her nose sat crooked beneath layers of white bandaging. Her jaw was wired shut. A breathing tube snaked into her mouth. Monitors beeped steadily, tracking vitals that said she was alive but looked dead. For the first time in 52 years, Victor Donovan's hands shook. He moved to the bedside like he was approaching something sacred and breakable. Sat in the plastic chair. Took her hand with infinite gentleness, avoiding the IV lines and the scraped palms wrapped in gauze. Princess, Daddy's here. Her eyes fluttered open. Barely, just slits between the swelling. Tears leaked from the corners, cutting tracks through the blood and bruising. She tried to speak, but the wired jaw made it impossible. A small sound emerged, lost and broken. Steele wiped her tears with his calloused thumb. His own tears fell unchecked. Shh, don't talk. You're safe now. I've got you. Lieutenant Sarah Williams entered, white coat, crisp, stethoscope around her neck. Her expression, the practiced neutrality of someone who delivered bad news for a living. Mr. Donovan, I'm Dr. Williams. Your daughter's attending physician? Steele stood, military bearing asserting itself automatically. How bad? Williams pulled up Katie's chart on the tablet, though she clearly didn't need to reference it. Broken nose, fractured jaw in 2 places, 2 broken ribs, severe concussion, extensive facial lacerations. She's lucky. Another few minutes and we'd be looking at internal bleeding, possibly fatal. Steele's jaw clenched so hard his teeth should have cracked. You're telling me she was beaten within an inch of her life? Yes, this wasn't a fight, Mr. Donovan. This was sustained, deliberate violence. Multiple attackers, boot prints on her ribs, defensive wounds on her hands. She tried to protect herself. They kept hitting anyway. Williams pulled up photos on her tablet. Clinical documentation of injuries, fist-shaped bruises, the distinctive tread pattern of work boots imprinted on pale skin, the kind of evidence that should matter in a courtroom. Who did this? Williams hesitated. Just a fraction of a second, long enough for Steele to read the fear. Mr. Chen said it was Senator Caldwell's son, Brandon Caldwell, and 4 others. There were witnesses. Students filmed it. But Mr. Donovan, she stopped, started again. No one's come forward with statements yet. Principal Andrews called 30 minutes ago. He's aware of the situation. He said there will be an investigation. The careful distance in her voice told Steele everything he needed to know about what that investigation would find. Nothing. The same nothing that had buried 6 previous complaints. The same nothing that let powerful men hurt the powerless without consequence. He sat back down beside Katie. She drifted into unconscious again, the pain medication pulling her under. He held her hand and felt something fundamental shift inside him. The last vestige of trust in institutions and authorities, in the belief that the system would eventually do right. Vietnam flashed through his mind. Young Steele carrying Tommy Brennan through 12 miles of jungle, both of them bleeding pursuit close behind. The promise he'd made, "I'll get you home, brother. I won't leave you." The understanding that sometimes the mission required everything you had, and more, that the code demanded sacrifice, that honor meant keeping your word even when keeping it killed you. He looked at the Purple Heart in his hand, the medal he'd earned for refusing to abandon Tommy, the physical proof that once upon a time he'd believed in something larger than himself. Katie had stood up, done right, challenged corruption the proper way, and been beaten unconscious for it while 30 students watched and filmed and did nothing. Steele stood, walked into the hallway, pulled out his phone. Gunny answered on the first ring. "How is she, Tranny?" Beaten within an inch of her life by Senator Caldwell's boy and 4 others. Witnesses everywhere. Nobody talking. Gunny's breath hissed through the line. "Say the word Steele. We ride. Get everyone to the clubhouse. Emergency session, 1 hour." "What are we doing, brother?" Steele looked back through the window at his daughter, broken and small in that hospital bed. Thought about the code, about Tommy Brennan, about the long march through the jungle that had taught him what mattered and what didn't. "We're going to war, Gunny, but we do it the right way." "Which way is that?" "The way that makes sure Katie's proud of her old man when she wakes up. The way that proves honor still matters. The way that shows these people that power without conscience is just tyranny waiting to fall." He hung up, returned to Katie's bedside, sat in the chair and held her hand and began planning the campaign. Not with violence, not with the easy rage that everyone expected from men like him, with something more dangerous, with patience, with evidence, with the cold, deliberate application of justice through channels that couldn't be bought or buried. In Vietnam, he'd learned that sometimes the mission required carrying the wounded 12 miles through hostile territory. Sometimes the code demanded you keep walking when every instinct screamed to quit. Sometimes honor meant choosing the hard right over the easy wrong. Brandon Caldwell and his father were about to learn what happened when you hurt a warrior's daughter. They were about to discover that some men still believed in codes older than corruption, that some battles were worth fighting, even when victory seemed impossible. That honor wasn't dead as long as one man still stood willing to defend it. Steele looked at the Purple Heart in his hand. The ribbon faded, but the promise indicated. "In the jungle, I learned that good men sometimes have to do hard things. I came home. Some didn't. This medal reminds me that honor isn't free. It's earned, it's fought for, it's defended." His voice came out whisper soft, meant only for his unconscious daughter. "I promised your mother I'd keep you safe. I promised myself I'd raise you to stand for what's right. You kept your half-princess, now I keep mine. And when you wake up, you'll wake up to a world where justice still means something. I swear it on every brother I lost in that jungle. I swear it on this medal. I swear it on everything I am." Outside the hospital window, 47 motorcycles pulled into the parking lot in formation. Waiting, ready, The Iron Brotherhood keeping vigil for one of their own. The long march had begun. The clubhouse smelled of old leather and motor oil and 50 years of brotherhood. 47 men besides Steele packed the main hall, ages spanning from 38 to 71, every face marked by service and sacrifice. The American flag hung above the bar holes from shrapnel still visible in the fabric, from when Preacher Tom had carried it out of a firefight in Hugh. Photos of fallen brothers lined the walls, men who'd ridden with them, men who'd bled beside them, men who understood that some debts transcended death. Steele stood at the head of the long oak table, his laptop projected images onto the wall screen. Katie's face before, smiling young whole. Then the hospital photos, the transformation from daughter to victim captured in clinical detail. The room went silent. Not the quiet of waiting, but the silence of men who'd seen atrocities and thought they'd left that world behind, only to discover it had followed them home. Steele's voice came out level, controlled. The same tone he'd used briefing missions in country when emotion would get people killed. Brothers, this is my daughter Katie, 16 years old, honor student, wants to be a doctor like her mother was. He clicked to the next image. Katie on that hospital bed, machinery keeping her alive, bruises turning her face into something unrecognizable. She did what we taught our children to do. She stood up to corruption. She reported a cheating ring run by a senator's son. She filed proper complaints through proper channels. She did everything right. Another click. The evidence files, test answer keys, financial records showing $48,000 moving from James Caldwell's accounts to teacher Raymond Peters over 2 years. And for doing the right thing, 5 boys beat her unconscious in a school parking lot, while 30 students watched and filmed and did nothing. Gunny Mike's fist hit the table, the sound like a gunshot in the enclosed space. We know where the senator lives. Say the word. Prophet James stood next the old Army Ranger's face carved from granite. Gulf War taught me patience. But this, he didn't finish, didn't need to. Every man in that room knew what came after patience expired. Steele raised his hand. The gesture carried authority earned through decades of leading men who volunteered to follow. I want to ride. Want to drag that boy out and teach him what pain feels like. Want to make the senator watch. Want to burn their world down and salt the earth after. He paused. Let them hear the truth of it. Let them know he felt what they felt. But we can't, because if we do, we prove everyone right about us. We become the criminals they say we are. Katie wouldn't be proud. And everything she stood for gets buried under stories about violent bikers taking revenge. Doc Frank Morrison stood. 66 years old hands that had held together wounded men in rice paddies and emergency rooms in VA hospital corridors. His voice carried the weight of someone who'd seen what violence actually cost. So what do we do? Watch that bastard walk free. Before Steele could answer, Judge Harold Brennan rose from his seat at the far end of the table. The retired JAG officer had been quiet through the meeting, but something in his posture suggested he'd been waiting for this moment. Brothers, I need to tell you something. He pulled a folder from his briefcase. Old documents yellowed with age, stamped with classification markings that had expired decades ago. I've been tracking Senator Caldwell for 32 years. The room's attention shifted. Judge spread papers across the table. Military contracting forms, investigation reports, witness statements that had disappeared from official records. 1991, Gulf War. I was a JAG captain assigned to investigate procurement fraud. Someone was billing the government for equipment we never received. Ammunition, medical supplies, food, $2.3 million worth. His hands shook slightly as he touched the documents. Paper trail led back to a young state legislator named James Caldwell. He was running a shell corporation that won contracts through his father's connections, delivering 20% of what he billed for, pocketing the difference. Judge's voice dropped lower. I had him, had the evidence, had witnesses ready to testify, was about to file charges. The pause stretched. Every man in that room understood what came in stories like this. Evidence disappeared from the secure filing room. Witnesses recanted. I got transferred to a desk job in Virginia. Case closed. Caldwell walked away clean. Use the money to fund his first Senate campaign. Judge looked up, met Steele's eyes. I backed down. I was afraid for my career, my family, my future. I let a guilty man go free, and I've regretted it every single day since. His voice hardened. I won't make that mistake again. I have contacts. Federal prosecutors I trust from my JAG days. Military investigators who remember. We can do this legally, but we need irrefutable evidence. We need to build a case so solid that even Caldwell's money can't bury it. Steele studied the old officer, saw the same guilt he'd carried from Vietnam. The weight of compromises made for good reasons that turned out to be betrayals of everything you believed. What do you need? Judge pulled out a yellow legal pad covered in notes, planning for this moment even before Steele called the meeting. 3 teams, evidence, community, protection. We document everything. We get the accomplices to flip. We find every victim Caldwell's buried. We build a federal RICO case that crushes them both. Preacher Tom stood. The Korean war medic turned chaplain that had spent 40 years counseling broken men. His voice carried pastoral authority. And we do it without compromising our souls. We use the law. We trust the system one more time, not because we believe in it, but because Katie believed in it. Around the table, the 47 men nodded, understanding the mission, understanding the cost of the mission, understanding that sometimes the hardest fight was the one where you couldn't use your fists. Steele divided them into teams. Judge took 5 men for evidence gathering. Numbers: Pete Rodriguez, the retired IRS auditor. Crow, who understood digital systems. 3 others with backgrounds in investigation and documentation. Preacher took 10 for community outreach. Men with soft voices and hard experience. Men who understood how to talk to frightened parents. Gunny took the rest for protection detail. Round-the-clock watch on Katie, surveillance on potential witnesses, the visible reminder that the Brotherhood protected its own. They dispersed at midnight, riding out in small groups, no loud displays, no intimidation, just quiet men on a quiet mission to do what the system wouldn't. Steele remained at the clubhouse alone, bawling, pulled up the evidence files on his laptop, began mapping connections, Senator Caldwell's donations to Principal Andrews, contributions to County Prosecutor Davis's campaign, golf club membership shared with Judge Hendricks. The web of corruption was extensive but not invisible, just protected. His phone rang at 2 in the morning. Unknown number. Steele almost let it go to voicemail. The woman's voice came through hesitant, afraid, determined. Mr. Donovan, my name is Margaret Caldwell. I'm Brandon's mother. I need to talk to you about what my son did to your daughter. Steele's hand tightened on the phone. Why are you calling? A long pause. The sound of someone gathering courage for a confession that would destroy everything she had. Because I'm ashamed. Because I'm ready to tell the truth. Because when I saw that girl's face on the news, she looked like our daughter would have looked. Your daughter, Mom. Margaret's voice broke. Emily, born 99, died 2001. Sid's officially. But she had bruises that night. James was alone with her. I never asked. I was too afraid. And I've hated myself every day since. Steele's breath caught. This wasn't just corruption. This was deeper, darker. What do you want from me? Protection. And a chance to make this right. I have evidence. Financial records, emails, recordings. I've been documenting my husband's crimes for 2 years, planning my escape. Now I'm ready to use it. But Mr. Donovan, he'll kill me if he finds out I'm talking to you. Steele gave her the address of Mountain View Public Library. Neutral ground. Public. Safe. Tomorrow, 11 a.m. Bring everything you have. I'll bring men you can trust. She hung up without goodbye. Steele sat in the darkness and felt the mission shift. This wasn't just about Katie anymore. This was about every victim James Caldwell had buried. Every life he'd destroyed. Every person who'd been too afraid to stand up until now. The library smelled of old books and floor wax. Margaret Caldwell sat at a corner table in the reference section, a leather folder clutched to her chest like armor. 52 years old but looking 70. Elegant clothes on a frame that had been systematically broken down. Haunted eyes that had seen too much. Steele approached with judge and preacher flanking him. Three men who could look dangerous but were trying hard not to. Margaret's hands shook as she opened the folder. I need to show you something first, so you understand. Medical records, 22 years of emergency room visits, broken arm in '98, fell downstairs, fractured ribs in 2003, car accident, concussion in 2007, slipped in shower, 18 documented injuries, 18 convenient explanations. Judge's jaw clenched as he read. Preacher made the sign of the cross. Margaret's voice came out flat, rehearsed. The tone of someone who'd told this story to herself so many times that emotion had been scrubbed away. My husband has been beating me for 24 years. Brandon witnessed most of it. James taught him that power means you can hurt people without consequences. That real men take what they want. That weakness is contemptible. She pulled out her phone, showed text messages from the previous week. James to Margaret after the assault, Brandon handled the Katie problem. That's what men do. Margaret's response. He almost killed her. James, she'll recover, and she'll learn her place. The words hung in the quiet library air like an indictment. Margaret produced more evidence. 12 years of financial records showing payoffs to local officials. Emails detailing schemes, wire transfers, shell corporations. The systematic machinery of corruption laid bare. Then the bombshell, an audio file. Margaret hit play. Senator Caldwell's voice came through clear, recorded 2 days before the assault. Brandon the Hayes girl is causing problems. You need to handle it. Brandon's voice younger, uncertain. Handle it how? Use your judgment, but people need to understand that the Caldwell family doesn't tolerate disrespect. Make sure she learns her lesson. Hard enough that everyone else learns it too. What if it goes too far? A pause, then James Caldwell's voice cold and calculating. Just make sure there's no direct evidence tying back to me. You're a minor. Worst case, you get juvenile detention, but my contacts will bury it like always. The recording ended. Margaret sat trembling. I've been too afraid to leave for 20 years, too afraid to speak up, too focused on protecting my lifestyle and my image. But when I saw Katie's face on the news, she couldn't finish. Judge handed her tissues from his jacket pocket. Preacher touched her shoulder gently. Steele sat back and processed what this meant. Margaret straightened, found her voice again. I'm filing for divorce. I'm testifying against my husband and my son. I'm losing everything. My home, my social standing, my friends, everything. Steele's voice came out gentler than expected. Why now? Because Katie Donovan has a father who would move heaven and earth for her. Emily never had that. Neither did I. I can't save my daughter, but maybe I can save yours and all the others. She slid the entire folder across the table. This is everything. Financial crimes, obstruction of justice, conspiracy, witness tampering, RICO violations. It's all documented, dates, names, amounts. I've been preparing for 2 years. Judge opened the folder. His hands moved faster as he read his JAG training cataloging charges. This is federal. This is ironclad. Mrs. Caldwell, you understand what you're handing us. I understand I'm complicit. I stood by while my husband hurt people, while he taught our son to hurt people. I'm not asking for forgiveness. I'm asking you to stop them before they kill someone. Steele met her eyes, saw the courage it took to destroy your own life for people you'd never meet, saw the particular bravery of someone who'd been beaten down for decades finally finding the strength to stand. You have my word. We'll protect you. And we'll make sure your husband and son face everything they've done. Margaret nodded, started to stand, then hesitated. Mr. Donovan, one more thing. Be careful. James has friends everywhere. Police, judges, prosecutors. He'll come after you with everything he has. He's already talking about having you arrested for intimidation. Steele smiled without humor. Ma'am, I've been shot at by professionals. Your husband doesn't scare me. They left the library with the evidence folder. Margaret drove away alone, headed for the domestic violence shelter that Preacher had arranged, protected by Brotherhood members who understood that some battles required defending the defenseless. Judge spent the afternoon on secure phone calls, reaching out to contacts from his JAG days. Ellen Rodriguez, now a federal prosecutor in Charlotte, Colonel David Thompson, military criminal investigation. Both remembered the 91 case. Both had been waiting for another chance. Ellen's voice carried controlled fury through the speaker. Harold, if this evidence is as solid as you're saying, I can file federal charges within 48 hours. RICO, conspiracy, obstruction, the works. Colonel Thompson added his piece. Senator's son is on ROTC scholarship. Assault disqualifies him immediately. We have jurisdiction under UCMJ. I've been wanting to nail Caldwell since 91. Let's finish what we started. While Judge built the federal case, Gunny's team visited the four accomplices. Early Sunday morning, before families went to church, when the truth couldn't hide behind busy schedules. Ethan Carter's house stood in a working-class neighborhood, small ranch, 2 cars that had seen better years. Father answered the door in work clothes, mother behind him, in a floral dress ready for service. Gunny introduced himself and Prophet and Doc, 3 old men who'd earned the right to be heard. Showed Ethan's father the assault video that had been sent anonymously by a guilty student. The mother's scream carried through the quiet Sunday morning. Father's face drained of color as he watched his son hold Katie's arms while Brandon beat her. Watched the boot connect with her ribs. Watched her blood pool on asphalt. Gunny's voice stayed calm, reasonable, the tone of someone offering a lifeline to drowning people. Your son participated in felony assault. Brandon Caldwell can't protect him. Senator Caldwell can't protect him. They're both going down, but Ethan has a chance to do the right thing. Ethan came downstairs, 17 years old, eyes red from not sleeping. He'd been carrying this for days. The father turned on him with fury and heartbreak. What did you do? Ethan broke. The words came tumbling out between sobs. Brandon paid them each $500. Brandon said his dad would make it disappear. Brandon said they were just teaching her a lesson. Brandon promised no one would get hurt bad. The mother sank into a chair. The father stood rigid, trying to process that his son was a criminal. Gunny waited, let the family absorb the truth, then spoke again. Brandon lied. People are hurt. Katie Donovan has a broken jaw, broken ribs, concussion. She almost died, and you're all responsible. Ethan's voice came out small. I know, I dream about it every night. Her screaming, blood everywhere. I'm so sorry. Prophet leaned forward, the old ranger who'd seen men break under pressure and men find courage in crisis. Son, sorry isn't enough, but testimony is. You tell the truth in court. You face what you did. You help make sure Brandon and his father pay for this. That's how you start making this right. The father made the decision for his family. He'll testify. He'll tell everything. We can't afford lawyers anyway. If cooperating reduces his sentence, he cooperates. Similar scenes played out at 3 other houses. Marcus Park's immigrant parents terrified of authority until Prophet showed them his ranger tab and explained that honor transcended nations. Cole Lewis's single mother working 2 jobs, exhausted, grateful someone, was offering her son a path to redemption. Jason Martinez's father, a Gulf War vet himself, who understood codes of honor and immediately agreed. By Sunday afternoon, all 4 accomplices had agreed to testify. All 4 had given preliminary statements. All 4 had implicated Brandon as the planner, the leader, the one who promised his father would bury everything. The evidence was building. Financial records, witness testimony, audio recordings, medical documentation, pattern of behavior spanning years. Judge assembled it into a prosecution memo that read like an indictment handed down from a grand jury that hadn't convened yet. Friday afternoon, Steele made the call to Senator Caldwell's office, requested a meeting, used Judge's name and credentials, mentioned evidence of UCMJ violations from 91. The secretary's tone changed immediately. Suddenly, the senator had availability. They rode to the Capitol building at 3 p.m. Steele, Judge, Gunny, Preacher, 4 men in leather vests and silver hair, walking into Power's house carrying truth like a loaded weapon. Senator James Caldwell's office occupied a corner suite with mountain views and expensive furniture. Photos with presidents lined the walls. Diplomas from prestigious schools. American flag pin on his lapel. The costume of respectability worn by someone who'd corrupted everything it represented. Caldwell stood behind his desk, 58 years old, tailored suit, smile that didn't reach his eyes. Gentlemen, my secretary said this was urgent. Steele stepped forward. Your son and 4 others beat my daughter unconscious. We're here to discuss what happens next. The smile faltered. I'm aware of the alleged incident. Unfortunate misunderstanding between teenagers. Boys can be rough. I'm prepared to offer compensation. 25,000 should cover medical expenses. He pulled out a checkbook, the gesture of a man accustomed to buying his way past consequences. Steele's voice went cold. I'm in. You think you can buy this? Mr. Donovan, let's be realistic. You're a mechanic on disability pension. 25,000 is more than you make in 6 months. Your daughter will recover. Everyone moves on. Gunny took a step forward, growling low. Steele's hand stopped him. We're not here for money, Senator. We're here to give you a choice. Judge placed 3 folders on the expensive desk, labeled simply, Gulf War, Katie Donovan, Pattern of Corruption. Resign immediately, issue public apology, turn yourself and your son into federal authorities. Cooperate fully. Caldwell laughed, the sound of someone who'd never faced real consequences. And if I don't, Judge opened the first folder, spread 30-year-old documents across the mahogany surface. Then we release this, Gulf War contracting fraud, $2.3 million. I was the JAG officer you had transferred. I've been carrying this guilt for 32 years, no more. Second folder, financial records, emails, wire transfers. 12 years of payoffs to local officials, Principal Andrews, County Prosecutor Davis, Judge Hendricks, RICO violations, all documented. Third folder, the audio recording cued on a phone. Judge hit play. Senator Caldwell's voice filled his own office. Make sure the Hayes girl learns her lesson, hard enough that everyone else learns it too. The words of a man ordering violence against a child, conspiracy to commit aggravated assault, captured in his own voice. The color drained from Caldwell's face. He sank into his chair. Where did you get this? Steele met his eyes. Your wife, she's had enough. Filed for divorce this morning. Restraining order granted. She's in protective custody with 24 years of medical records documenting your abuse. Caldwell stood, rage replacing shock. Margaret Wooden, you're lying. She already did. This drive has copies of everything. It's being uploaded to 5 federal prosecutors in Steele checked his watch. 2 minutes. U.S. Attorney's Office in Charlotte, Military Criminal Investigation, FBI, DOJ Civil Rights Division, and the Inspector General for the Senate Ethics Committee. You're bluffing. Steele walked to the door, Gunny, Judge, and Preacher following. You have 24 hours to do the right thing. After that, it's out of our hands. Federal jurisdiction, military investigation, media exposure. You're done either way. This is your last chance to surrender with dignity. Caldwell's voice rose to a shout as they left. Wait, we can make a deal. I have friends, power. You can't just... Preacher turned back, his chaplain's voice carrying the weight of 40 years counseling dying men. Senator, I've sat with the powerful at the end. They all say the same thing. I wish I'd been better. You have a chance to be better. Take it. Steele's final words echoed down the marble corridor. In Vietnam, I learned that power without honor is tyranny. You're about to learn that too. They rode away from the Capitol as the sun set orange and gold over the mountains. Behind them, James Caldwell made frantic phone calls to lawyers and allies and friends who suddenly weren't answering. The evidence packets were already landing in federal inboxes. Prosecutors were already reading. The machinery of justice was already grinding forward. Not the local justice that Caldwell owned, federal justice, the kind that couldn't be bought or buried. Steele pulled into the hospital parking lot as night fell. Went to Katie's room, sat beside her bed. She'd been awake for brief periods now, healing slowly. Still in pain but alive, her eyes opened, focused on him with effort. She tried to speak through the wired jaw but couldn't. Reached for the notepad on the side table. Wrote in shaky letters, "Did you hurt them?" Mad Steele read it, understood what she was really asking. Did you become what they say you are? Did you prove them right? Did my sacrifice mean nothing? No, princess. We did something better. We proved them guilty. Federal prosecutors have the evidence. The senator and his son are finished. We did it legally, the right way, the way you'd be proud of. She wrote again. You kept the code. Steele felt his throat tighten. You showed me how. You stood up first. I just followed my daughter's example. Katie's eyes closed, a small smile visible despite the swelling. Steele held her hand and felt the weight of 32 years lift from Judge. Felt the burden of every compromise every time they'd let power win because fighting seemed impossible. Not this time. This time honor would matter. Justice would matter. The code would matter. Outside, 47 motorcycles stood guard in the parking lot, a wall of leather and chrome and graying men who remembered when duty meant something, who'd carried that memory through decades of disappointment, who'd finally found a battle worth fighting the old way. The long march continued, and for the first time in a long time, it felt like they were marching toward something instead of away from it. Saturday morning broke cold and gray over Asheville. At 6 a.m., federal agents and windbreakers marked FBI and DOJ fanned across 3 locations simultaneously: Senator Caldwell's mountain estate, his downtown office, the lake house where Brandon had celebrated with friends the night after the assault. The raids were surgical, professional, inevitable. Steele watched from his truck parked 2 blocks from the mansion, not gloating, just bearing witness, making sure that what needed to happen actually happened. Judge sat beside him, phone to his ear, receiving updates from Ellen Rodriguez. The senator emerged in handcuffs at 6:32, still in pajamas and bathrobe. No dignity, no grace. Just a powerful man suddenly rendered powerless by the machinery he'd thought he controlled. News crews captured everything. The perp walk played on loop within the hour. Brandon came out separately, fighting the agents, screaming about his father, about lawyers, about people who would fix this. Nobody fixed it. The cuffs stayed on, the charges stayed filed. The evidence stayed irrefutable. By noon, the story dominated every news channel, not just local, national. CNN ran the audio recording of the senator ordering violence. Fox showed the assault video alongside Brandon's Instagram caption. NPR interviewed legal experts about RICO applications to political corruption. The narrative was unified for once. Powerful family, pattern of violence, system that enabled them, father who wouldn't let it stand. The Iron Brotherhood stayed out of it. No interviews, no statements, just quiet men who'd done quiet work and let the evidence speak. Steele visited Katie that afternoon, found her sitting up in bed, watching the news coverage on the hospital TV. She wrote on her notepad, hand steadier now. They arrested him. Both of them, Senator and Brandon, 4 accomplices already cooperating. Principal Andrews resigned this morning. County prosecutor announced he's recusing himself from all Caldwell-related cases. Katie wrote again, "You did this without violence." Steele sat beside her bed. "We did this with truth. Same weapon you used when you filed that first report. You showed us the way, Princess. We just followed." Her eyes welled up, not from pain now, but from something else. Relief, maybe. Vindication. The understanding that standing up had mattered after all. Sunday morning, 500 people gathered at the courthouse steps. Not protesters, vigil holders. Veterans in dress uniforms. Parents with children, teachers, students. Assault survivors who'd stayed silent until now. They lit candles and held signs. "Thank you, Iron Brotherhood. Justice for Katie. Protect our children." Preacher led a prayer, his chaplain's voice carrying across the crowd without amplification. "Lord, we've seen corruption triumph for too long. We've watched the powerful escape consequences while the powerless suffered. Today we witness justice, not revenge, not vigilantism. Justice through the law, through courage, through people who refuse to stay silent anymore." The local newspaper ran a front-page photo, the 47 Brotherhood members plus Steele standing at the edge of the vigil. Not participating, not seeking attention, just present, guardian angels in leather vests. One mother approached Steele afterwards, showed him a photo of her daughter. Emily Sanders. Brandon assaulted her 2 years ago. Case was buried in 48 hours. She tried to kill herself 6 months later. She's alive but broken. Thank you for doing what I couldn't. Steele took the photo, memorized the name. Another victim, another reason this had to matter. Ma'am, justice isn't just for Katie, it's for Emily too. And every girl Brandon hurt. They're all getting their day now. The woman hugged him, this grizzled Vietnam vet whose society had labeled dangerous, sobbed into his chest while the 47 brothers formed a protective circle around the moment, giving her space to grieve and heal and hope. 3 months later, the trial began. Federal courthouse in Charlotte. Judge presiding who had no connection to Caldwell money. Jury selected carefully. 4 veterans, 3 mothers, 2 teachers, 1 nurse, 2 retirees, people who understood duty and honor and the cost of their absence. Brandon's defense team cost $3 million. DC lawyers flown in special. Their strategy became clear in opening statements. He's a victim too. Raised by an abusive father, taught that violence solved problems. Affluenza defense wrapped in psychological trauma. He deserves rehabilitation, not destruction. Ellen Rodriguez stood for the prosecution, 48 years old, 2 daughters of her own. She'd volunteered for this case personally after reading the evidence packets. The defense wants you to feel sorry for a young man who planned an assault, paid accomplices, beat a girl unconscious, and posted video of it online with a caption celebrating what he'd done. You'll hear testimony from Katie Donovan, from 6 other victims, from his own accomplices who'll tell you Brandon promised his father would make it disappear. This isn't a mistake. This is a pattern. And patterns don't deserve sympathy. They deserve consequences. The first week consisted of medical testimony and the 4 accomplices, each boy corroborating the same story. Brandon planned it. Brandon paid them $500 each. Brandon said his father would bury it like he'd buried everything else. Brandon showed no remorse until federal agents arrived. Marcus broke down on the stand, 17 years old and carrying weight that aged him. I dream about it every night, her screaming, blood on the asphalt. I knew it was wrong when it was happening, but I was afraid of Brandon, afraid of his father, afraid of standing alone. So I held her arms while he hit her, and I'll hate myself for that until the day I die. The defense cross-examined hard, tried to suggest the boys were lying to reduce sentences. Marcus didn't flinch. I'm lying. There's video, 20 different angles. Students filmed it. Brandon posted it himself. The only lie was thinking we'd get away with it because his dad was powerful. Friday of the second week, Katie took the stand. Steele sat in the front row of the gallery. The 47 brothers filled the rows behind him. Katie walked to the witness box without assistance now. 3 months of healing, jaw healed enough to remove the wires. Scars visible but fading. She wore a simple blue dress and no makeup to hide the damage. Ellen Rodriguez approached gently. Katie, can you tell the jury what happened November 1st? Katie's voice came out steady. She'd been practicing this for weeks. With therapists, with her father, with herself in mirrors where she faced what had been done. I was walking to my bike after school. Brandon Caldwell and 4 others were waiting. They formed a circle around me. Brandon said I'd cost his father $50,000 by reporting the cheating ring. He said people needed to learn their place. She described the assault without crying. Clinical, factual. The way trauma survivors learn to speak about horror by draining it of emotion. Each blow, each kick, the sound of her own screaming, the feeling of ribs breaking, the taste of blood. The moment consciousness started slipping away. I remember thinking my father would be proud I'd stood up. And then I remember thinking I might die without telling him that. And then I don't remember anything until the hospital. Ellen showed photos. Katie's face in the hospital. The jurors flinched. 2 women wiped tears. 1 veteran's jaw clenched so hard his face went white. Katie, why did you report the cheating ring? Because it was wrong, because other students worked hard for their grades and Brandon was buying his. Because my father taught me that honor means doing right even when it's hard. The defense attorney stood for cross-examination. Young, expensive suit, voice dripping with false sympathy. Miss Donovan, I'm sorry for what happened to you, but isn't it true your father has a criminal record? Steele's hands gripped the armrests. Judge touched his shoulder. Easy, Katie's voice didn't waver. My father was arrested for a bar fight when I was 4. He served probation. He's been honorable every day since. He taught me that mistakes don't define you. Choices do. He made good choices. Brandon made bad ones. Your father leads a motorcycle club with a reputation. My father leads a brotherhood of military veterans who believe honor still matters. Something Brandon Caldwell clearly doesn't understand. Isn't this just revenge for your father's past? Katie leaned forward, eyes hard. This is about stopping bullies who think power makes them untouchable. My father showed me you stop them with evidence and courage, not by staying silent, not by being afraid. That's what I did. That's what he did. We stood up, together. The defense attorney realized he'd lost this exchange. Sat down quickly. Ellen had no redirect. Katie had said everything that needed saying. As Katie stepped down, Steele caught her eye, nodded once, pride radiating from him like heat. She returned to the gallery and sat beside him. He took her hand, squeezed gently, no words needed. The following Monday brought the previous victims, 6 girls between 15 and 19, each telling similar stories. Brandon's escalating violence, the harassment, the assaults, the threats, the complaints filed and buried, the families who'd moved away or given up or stayed silent from fear. Amy Chen testified via video conference from Seattle, now 19, still in therapy. He choked me until I passed out. When I reported it, I got death threats, anonymous texts saying they'd kill my dog. My parents were scared. We moved 3 states away. I thought I'd never see justice. Thank you for giving me this chance. Margaret Caldwell took the stand. Wednesday, 3 months of separation from her husband had changed her, thinner, grayer, but standing taller somehow. The weight of complicity lifted even as the weight of testimony pressed down. She described 24 years of abuse, showed medical records, played audio recordings of her husband's violence. Then the crucial evidence, the phone call where James ordered Brandon to teach Katie a lesson hard enough that everyone would learn. My husband created a monster. He taught our son that power means immunity, that violence is strength, that people are obstacles to be removed. I stayed silent for too long, enabled it, protected it, but when I saw Katie Donovan's face on the news, I saw my daughter Emily, and I knew I couldn't stay silent anymore. The defense tried to paint her as a scorned wife seeking revenge. Margaret's response cut through the accusation. I'm a mother who failed her daughter and nearly let that failure cost more girls their lives. This isn't revenge. This is atonement. This is making sure my silence stops being complicit in violence. Thursday brought Steele to the stand. He'd worn his dress uniform. Marine Corps service coat, Purple Heart, Bronze Star. 62 years old but carrying himself like the warrior he'd been. Would always be. Ellen established his background. Vietnam, 2 tours, wounded in action carrying a fellow Marine to safety, honorable discharge, 30 years running an honest motorcycle repair shop, raising a daughter alone after his wife's death. Mr. Donovan, what did you do when you learned Katie had been assaulted? Steele's voice carried the gravel of age and experience. Ma'am, I wanted to kill them. Wanted to ride to that boy's house and show him what real violence looked like. Wanted to make his father watch. Every instinct I had from Vietnam said go to war. The courtroom went silent. This was the moment the defense had been waiting for. Proof that the biker was dangerous. That this was all revenge. Steele continued, but my daughter taught me something. She stood up to corruption legally, reported it properly, did everything right, then got beaten for it. If I responded with violence, I'd prove everyone right about us. I'd bury her courage under stories about criminal bikers. So I did what she would be proud of. Gathered evidence, worked with law enforcement, let justice work. Ellen let that settle. Was that hard, choosing the legal path? Hardest thing I've done since Vietnam. Carrying a wounded man through 12 miles of jungle was easier, because that was just physical. This required trusting a system that had already failed my daughter. Required believing that doing right mattered even when evidence suggested it didn't. Required faith. Do you have that faith now? Steele looked at the jury. You tell me. You're here. The evidence is here. The senator can't bury this. His money can't fix it. So yes, I have faith. Faith that 12 good people can see truth when it's laid bare. Faith that honor still matters. Faith that my daughter's courage meant something. The defense attorney approached for cross. Mr. Donovan, you led 47 armed men to Senator Caldwell's home. We knocked on his door, presented evidence, didn't threaten anyone. That's called due process. You wanted revenge. Steele's voice hardened. I wanted justice. There's a difference. Revenge is about making myself feel better. Justice is about making sure Brandon Caldwell never hurts another girl. About showing every victim that their silence can end. About proving that power without honor eventually falls. The defense realized he was making their case worse. Dismissed the witness. Brandon took the stand Friday against his lawyer's advice. 17 years old and genuinely broken by the weight of facing real consequences. He described his father's abuse, the lessons about power, the understanding that violence was acceptable if you were strong enough. I didn't think I was doing anything that bad. Girls had reported me before nothing happened. My dad made it go away. I thought that's just how things worked for people like us. Ellen Rodriguez destroyed him methodically on cross. You thought beating a girl unconscious was okay? No. I mean, it went too far. How far was too far? The first punch, the second, the kick to her broken ribs, posting the video online. Brandon had no answer. You said girls had reported you before. How many? I don't know. 6, 7. And your father made those go away. So you knew it was wrong. You just thought you wouldn't face consequences. Silence. You're not a victim, Brandon. You're a predator who got caught. The only reason you're sorry is because for once, Daddy couldn't save you. The closing arguments stretched over Monday. Defense pleading for mercy, for understanding, for rehabilitation. Ellen Rodriguez stood for her final statement, walked slowly to the jury box. Brandon Caldwell planned this assault, paid accomplices, executed it while 30 students watched, posted video celebrating it, and only showed remorse when facing prison. The defense says he's young, he's 17, old enough to drive, old enough to know beating an unconscious girl is wrong, old enough for consequences. She paused. Katie Donovan showed courage. Victor Donovan showed restraint. Margaret Caldwell showed redemption. Brandon Caldwell showed us exactly who he is. Believe him. The jury deliberated 7 hours. Returned Thursday afternoon. The foreman was a Vietnam vet, 70 years old, face carved from granite and honor. On the charge of aggravated assault in the first degree, we find the defendant guilty. 7 counts, all guilty, conspiracy, guilty, witness intimidation, guilty. Brandon collapsed sobbing. His expensive lawyers sat helpless. Katie gripped Steele's hands so hard her knuckles went white. Steele sat motionless. No triumph, just quiet satisfaction that the mission was complete. Sentencing came 2 weeks later. Judge McKenzie was 65, former prosecutor. No patience for entitled criminals. Brandon Caldwell, you filmed your own crime, posted it publicly, showed zero remorse until facing prison. Your privilege taught you that rules didn't apply. This court teaches different. 8 years federal prison. Eligible for parole after 6. Use that time to learn what your father never taught you. That power without character is tyranny. That strength without honor is barbarism. That you are not above the law. Senator Caldwell's trial proceeded separately. Faster, the evidence was overwhelming: financial fraud, RICO violations, conspiracy to obstruct justice, ordering violence against a minor. Margaret's testimony and recordings sealed his fate. The jury deliberated 4 hours. Guilty on all 18 counts. Judge McKenzie showed no mercy. Senator Caldwell, you corrupted every institution you touched. You taught your son that violence was acceptable. You buried complaint after complaint. You used public office for private gain. 16 years federal prison. All assets seized. $2.8 million in restitution to victims. The courtroom erupted in applause. The judge didn't stop it. Let justice be celebrated for once. Principal Andrews received 4 years for accepting bribes. County Prosecutor Davis 5 years in disbarment. 3 school board members probation and fines. The entire corrupt machinery dismantled piece by piece. Katie returned to Mountain View Prep in January. The school had transformed. New principal, former military officer with zero tolerance policies, new security, new protocols. The culture shift was tangible. She founded a club, Stand Up, Speak Out, support group for assault victims. Safe space to report bullying. 19 students joined the first meeting. By spring, it was 47. Steele attended Katie's first public speech. School assembly. 800 students quiet as she walked to the podium. 3 months ago, I was beaten and unconscious in this parking lot for doing the right thing, for standing up to corruption. I thought I'd lost everything, my safety, my faith in justice, my belief that courage mattered. She paused, found her father in the crowd. But my dad taught me something. He's a Vietnam veteran. He learned in that war that sometimes the mission requires everything you have. That honor isn't about winning. It's about refusing to quit, about standing up even when standing gets you hurt. Her voice strengthened. He could have chosen violence. Everyone expected him to. But he chose the harder path. Evidence, truth, law. Because that's what I would be proud of. Because revenge feels good, but justice matters more. Because he wanted to prove that honor still exists. Standing ovation. 800 students on their feet. Katie crying. Steele crying in the back row beside the 47 brothers who'd fought the good fight and won. 18 months after the assault, Katie graduated valedictorian, accepted to UNC Chapel Hill pre-med on full scholarship. Her graduation speech focused on courage, on standing alone until others find the strength to stand with you, on fathers who teach honor through actions, not words. Steele sat in the audience in his dress uniform. Now 63 years old, Katie called him to the stage at the end. The crowd rose as the Vietnam vet joined his daughter. She hugged him and whispered so only he could hear. "Thank you for teaching me the code, Dad. Thank you for keeping it. Thank you for reminding me why it matters, Princess." 3 years post-assault, the Iron Brotherhood had evolved. The Guardian program formalized. Volunteer escorts for assault victims going to court. Pro bono security for threatened witnesses. Fundraising for legal aid. 400,000 raised. 34 cases supported across North Carolina. Steele received interview requests from national media. 60 Minutes, CNN, NPR. He declined them all except one. Local paper, young reporter who'd covered the trial. "Why do you do this?" Steele looked out at the clubhouse. The 47 original members and 12 new ones. Veterans from Iraq and Afghanistan, younger but carrying the same code forward. Because we're fathers, grandfathers, brothers. We remember what it means to protect the innocent. In Vietnam, I learned to carry the wounded even when it cost everything. That mission never ends. It just changes terrain. Home instead of jungle. Courtrooms instead of firefights. But the purpose stays the same. Protect those who can't protect themselves. Stand for what's right. Never stop marching toward honor. The reporter published it front page. The Iron Brotherhood received 43 applications from younger veterans the following month. Katie's 19th birthday arrived on a Saturday 3 years after the assault. Steele picked her up from UNC campus. They rode together to the clubhouse. She'd learned to ride 2 years ago. Her own Harley now. Purple paint job, the color of healing. The clubhouse was packed. The 47 original members plus 15 new ones. Families, community members. 7 assault survivors, including Amy Chen, who'd flown in from Seattle. Margaret Caldwell, sober 3 years and volunteering at women's shelters. Preacher stood to speak. 71 now, voice still carrying pastoral authority. Brothers and friends, we gather to celebrate Katie Donovan. 3 years ago, she stood up to corruption. Got beaten for it. Could have stayed silent after. Could have let fear win. Instead, she founded programs that helped 34 other victims find courage. She reminded us what we'd been fighting for all these years. He raised his glass. To Katie, who showed old warriors that the mission continues, that honor survives, that courage is contagious. 60 voices. To Katie, she stood, tears streaming, but voice steady. 3 years ago, I thought courage meant standing alone. But my father and these men taught me different. Courage means standing together. Honor means protecting the weak. Justice means never giving up the march. She looked at Steele. My dad has a Purple Heart from Vietnam. He carried a wounded man 12 miles through enemy fire. He taught me that's what real strength looks like. Not the power to hurt, the will to help, not destroying your enemies, protecting your friends. She pulled out a small package, handed it to Steele. He opened it. A medal, custom made, bronze, engraved to the father who taught me honor. Steele's hands shook as he held it. This warrior who'd seen so much, done so much, finally receiving the recognition that mattered most. From his daughter, from the person whose courage had reminded him why he'd survived Vietnam, why he'd come home, why he'd kept the code all these decades. He stood, hugged Katie, the embrace of two people who'd walked through fire and emerged tempered by it. Thank you, Princess, for showing me the code still matters, for proving honor isn't dead as long as one person stands for it. As the celebration continued, Steele and Katie stepped outside, the parking lot full of motorcycles gleaming under autumn sun. Behind them, the clubhouse rang with laughter and stories and the sound of brotherhood. Katie spoke first. Dad, I'm thinking about law school after med school. Doctors heal bodies. Lawyers heal systems. The system failed us. I want to fix it. Steele smiled. Your mother would be so proud. Would you ride with me tomorrow? I'm speaking at another school about standing up to bullying. Princess, I'll ride with you anywhere. They put on helmets, started engines, the old warrior and his daughter who'd become a warrior herself, different battles, same code. The long march continuing into a future where honor still mattered because people still chose to uphold it. Steele's voice came through the helmet comm system. In Vietnam, I learned the long march, the mission with no end, just the next step forward. I thought I finished my march coming home in 70, but you taught me it never ends. Every day is another step toward honor, and another chance to stand up, another opportunity to protect the innocent. Katie's response came back strong. Then let's keep marching, Dad, together. They rode out as the sun set golden over the mountains. Behind them, the 47 motorcycles plus 15 new riders formed up, the next generation joining, the code passing from old hands to young, the mission continuing as it always had, as it always would. One wounded soul carried at a time, one injustice confronted, one stand for what's right when standing alone seemed impossible. The long march home had become the long march forward. And somewhere in that evolution, Steele understood what he'd been searching for since Vietnam. Purpose, legacy, proof that the blood spilled and the brothers lost and the years carrying guilt had meaning. Katie gave him that. Not by needing rescue, but by showing him how to rescue himself. How to transform rage into justice. How to turn the warrior's strength toward protection instead of destruction. How to prove that old codes and old values and old warriors still had purpose in a world that seemed determined to forget them. They rode into tomorrow together. Father and daughter, veteran and healer, the man who'd learned honor in jungle hell and the girl who'd reminded him it survived even here. Even now, even after everything tried to kill it. Victor Steele Donovan was now 65 years old. The years showed in silver hair and weathered skin, but not in the steel of his spine or the clarity of his purpose. He'd carried wounded men through Vietnamese jungles. He'd carried his daughter through the worst moment of her life. And now he carried the torch forward, passing it to the next generation of warriors who understood that some battles were worth fighting without fists. The march continued. It always would, as long as people stood up, as long as courage spread, as long as one generation taught the next that some things mattered more than safety or comfort or the easy path. Honor, duty, protecting the innocent. The code that Steele carried home from Vietnam and passed to his daughter. The code she'd pass forward now. The mission that had no end. Just the next step, and the next, and the next. Forever marching toward a justice that was worth fighting for.